My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old. I've been married to my husband Kevin, who is also 32, for 3 years now. Both of us work full-time jobs, juggle household chores, and we've been making it work. We don't have kids yet, but life has been fun, just the two of us. I work in sales for a trading company. A tough job, but it pays well, while Kevin earns less. But he loves his work and takes pride in it, and I've always admired that about him. Kevin often goes fishing, his hobby, and I was okay with it because it was his way of taking a break from work. We keep our finances separate. Aside from splitting the rent, I cover all other living expenses. It's never bothered me. I didn't have hobbies like Kevin, and I enjoyed watching him have fun. I save up more, and I felt it was okay for me to support him financially. That's how I genuinely felt. If there was one thing that bothered me about Kevin, it was his family, especially his mother-in-law. We live close to them, and because mother-in-law has trouble walking, Kevin often visited. I didn't mind it much, and I'd accompany him whenever I could. Today, on our rare day off, we brought a gift and visited mother-in-law. Well, it's been quite a while, hasn't it? Sorry we've been away. Mother-in-law sighed, seemingly annoyed. It's only been 2 weeks since we last visited. Kevin went alone last week because I had to work on my day off. You may be busy with work, but you're also a wife, you know. Yes. Every time we meet, mother-in-law throws snide comments my way. She doesn't like that I earn more than Kevin. A woman should support and stand by her husband, she'd lecture. Mom, enough. We're handling it between us. Well, if you say so. I think mother-in-law, who's been a homemaker her whole life, can't relate to a working woman like me. Really sorry about that, Kevin said on our way back home. The constant passive-aggressive comments and lectures were stressful, but Kevin always stood up for me, which made it bearable. Hey, it seems like this month's rent hasn't been paid. Checking my bank account after work, I noticed there was no money. We couldn't make the withdrawal. Usually, Kevin deposits his half after he gets his paycheck, but it seems he forgot this time. I'm a bit short on cash this month. Again? This wasn't the first time. Sometimes he'd buy something and not have enough to cover his half of the rent. Annoyed, I let out a sigh, and Kevin chuckled nervously. Sorry, can you cover it this time? He said it like it was no big deal. I'd understand it if it were once in a while. After all, we all want to make a big purchase sometimes. But didn't you say the same thing last month? It's a limited edition fishing rod. You said the same thing last month, didn't you? Couldn't you have discussed it with me before buying it? Even though we have separate finances, if we can't stick to the budget, we can't make it work. Especially when Kevin only pays half the rent. If he doesn't even cover that, then I'm left to handle all the living expenses. That's just not fair. Ugh, enough with the nagging. Kevin interrupts me, clearly annoyed, letting out a sigh and furrowing his brows. Nagging? Sure, we've had these kinds of conversations before, but only about shared expenses. I never meddled in how he spends his own money. Why are you always talking about money, Sarah? Are you obsessed? I was genuinely shocked to hear him say that. Well, we can't live here if we don't pay the rent, right? Talking about money all the time is unattractive. What? Unattractive, Kevin says, looking right at me. Why would he say something like that? I liked that Kevin wasn't concerned about money, and I was okay with managing our finances. And now he calls it unattractive? Seeing my silence, Kevin seems to think he's won the argument. He relaxes his face and lets out a resigned sigh. You know, like my mom always says, a woman should stay home and support her husband. What? If you don't make me look good, you're the one who's going to be embarrassed. Kevin says this dismissively, then turns his attention back to his phone. I was at a loss for words. Kevin always apologized for his mom's outdated views, saying she didn't understand me. Was that his true feeling? What does making him look good even mean? Is it just about silently supporting the household? I'm home! Welcome back. I was greeted by my mother-in-law, Susan, after a long day at work. What? Susan? I wasn't informed she'd be here today. Ignoring my surprise, Susan takes my bag and heads inside. I rush in and am speechless at what I see in the living room. What is all this? Boxes and belongings are cluttered everywhere, leaving no space to walk. Not just Susan, but my father-in-law is here too. Kevin is casually watching TV and drinking a beer. What's going on here? Lower your voice. What is all this? Kevin frowns at my confusion. My parents moved in today. Moved in? Here? He never mentioned this, not even this morning. Ignoring my shock, Susan is happily unpacking. Wait, I wasn't told about this. My mom's legs are getting worse. It's hard for her to live alone. But we have extra rooms, so it's fine. It'll lessen your burden if my mom lives with us. That's right. I'll help with the chores. It'll be good for you since you're so busy. I guess they never really cared about how I felt. Even if I said no, it seemed like no one would listen. What hurt the most was Kevin's attitude. We had rented a larger house with extra rooms, thinking about our future family, but I never thought our family would grow like this. My life turned into a living hell. My in-laws, father-in-law and mother-in-law, took over the room we had saved for our future kids and acted like they owned the place. I couldn't even sit on my favorite sofa or use the dining table anymore. I was expected to do all the housework and wasn't even allowed to sit. The only time I could sit was when everyone else was asleep. Eating leftovers alone, I couldn't help but cry. What am I doing? How did it come to this? When I asked for financial help, they berated me, saying, "You're earning money. Why are you so stingy? Planning to take our pension too?" When I talked to Kevin, he looked visibly annoyed. What's the big deal? Mom is helping with the chores, isn't she? Even the chores were eventually pushed onto me, with complaints about aching leg. I did the laundry, but I didn't like having my father-in-law and mother-in-law do the washing together. I ended up doing my own laundry, and despite the increased workload and financial burden, no one listened. Worse, I was told, "I didn't think you were such a cold person. If you have complaints, then leave." The Kevin who said this was not the Kevin I had loved. Maybe I should leave. I never thought I could be happy with these people. Your cooking is bland. I don't like the clothes. Why are you so slow? Don't you care about your family? Every day I was criticized for various things. I got used to seeing my meals thrown away and my belongings tossed into the trash. I felt nothing anymore, even when they nagged me daily. About this month's living expenses. You're still talking about that? You earn well, it's fine. But my credit card is being used without my permission. Is this all you, Susan? I just borrowed it. I'll pay you back eventually. Mother-in-law snorted when I showed her the statement. I don't know what she spent it on, but how could she spend nearly $5,000 in a month? Well, she admitted to the unauthorized use, and there's no way she could deny it with all those brand name items in her room bought with my card. Kevin said nothing, even after seeing this. He stopped doing the chores we used to share and wouldn't even look at me, but I won't let this go on any longer. That's enough. The next day, after hearing that from my lawyer, I took a day off from work and left the house, only to return with a truck. What about work? Mother-in-law, who was home alone, asked curiously. She widened her eyes when she saw me and the people behind me. Sorry, Susan. It might get a bit noisy. What? Who are these people? Please, go ahead. Ignoring mother-in-law, I nodded to the 3 burly men behind me. I led them to my room, bypassing a stunned mother-in-law. Please move everything out of this room. Understood. I watched the movers efficiently pack and carry out my belongings, feeling a sense of relief. Who knew it could be so quick once you make up your mind to leave? Hey, what do you think you're doing? You can't just do this without my permission! My mother-in-law snapped back to reality and started yelling. Ignoring her, she began to make a phone call. Maybe she's calling Kevin, or my father-in-law, or both. I don't really care. By the time they get here, it'll all be over anyway. My mother-in-law tried to stop the movers with her foul language, but she couldn't stop these burly guys. Sorry, this is the last of it. Having moved almost everything out, I finally addressed my ever-nagging mother-in-law. I'm leaving. What? Could you please give this to Kevin? As I tried to hand her an envelope, the door burst open with a loud noise. Kevin, out of breath, was standing there. As expected, he arrived after everything was done. The whole moving process took just about 30 minutes. What is this? Kevin looked at my empty room, lost for words, and then glared at me. What are you trying to do? Perfect timing. Here, this is for you. Ignoring Kevin's intense glare, I smiled and handed him the envelope. Stunned, Kevin looked inside and was visibly shocked. Divorce papers? What? My mother-in-law also peered over, her eyes widening. How dare you give divorce papers to my son? It means exactly what it says. Shall we get a divorce? My son married you! You should be grateful and serve this family! The movers, who had been waiting, frowned at my mother-in-law's outrageous comment. Seeing their reactions, I was convinced that her behavior was indeed abnormal. Good, this isn't normal. You did say, if you have complaints, then leave, right? I didn't mean it like... Kevin hesitated. He probably never thought I'd actually leave. He couldn't have imagined I'd walk away. So you thought I'd just quietly obey? Well, I have plenty of complaints, so I'll do as you wished and leave. I'm not stupid enough to stay here and endure this. Leaving those words for a stunned Kevin, I walked out of the house with the movers. Sorry for involving you in this mess. I apologized. No problem, we understand, they smiled. You've had it tough, they all said, comforting me. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. I was scared. I was sad. I was frustrated. But I managed to leave. I felt proud of myself for that. Later, I formally filed for divorce through my lawyer. If you have complaints, then leave. After that conversation, I had been quietly preparing for divorce. I consulted a lawyer and gathered evidence to support my reasons for divorce. Every complaint and snide remark from my mother-in-law and Kevin was recorded. I also documented any meals or personal items they had unjustly thrown away. My lawyer said I had enough evidence, so I immediately started the moving process. I had already signed a lease for my new place. All that was left was to move my stuff in. I chuckled at the few boxes that contained my life, but the thought of being surrounded by things I love excited me. I had to leave behind my favorite sofa and dining table, but I can always find new favorites. I heard from my lawyer that Kevin was stubbornly refusing to divorce. Apparently, Kevin and my mother-in-law even stormed the lawyer's office, demanding to know where I was. They also staked out my workplace, but my colleagues, who knew the situation, helped me avoid running into them. The evidence I had gathered against Kevin, my father-in-law, and mother-in-law was damning. If it went to court, I'd have the upper hand. Kevin finally agreed to the divorce when he realized how expensive a court battle would be. I also demanded repayment from my mother-in-law, not just for the alimony, but also for the money she had spent. She blustered about demanding money from me, but backed down when I mentioned I had evidence of her unauthorized use of my credit card. Family, huh? But her idea of family only included Kevin, my father-in-law, and herself. Did she forget how she'd always left me out? The word family, which she only used when it suited her, made me nauseous. After the divorce was finalized and the alimony paid, Kevin and his family moved away like they were fleeing. Their bad reputation had spread in the neighborhood, making it uncomfortable for them to stay. Plus, they couldn't afford the rent on Kevin's salary alone. Now, they're apparently living in a small house in the countryside, scraping by on Kevin's meager income and the parents' small pension. I'm miserable without money. Won't you come back? Kevin has emailed me multiple times, but I've blocked him without even reading the full messages. As for me, I'm surrounded by things I love, doing a job I enjoy, and living a happy life. No one's throwing my stuff away anymore. No more worrying about complaints. Life is good. Now there's someone at work who's caught my eye. We're both busy, but he's a kind person who says we can take things at our own pace. He knows about my past failures, and has told me he'll wait until I'm ready to trust again. We both want a life where we're independent, but supportive of each other. That's the life I plan to live with him from now on.
You got pregnant with that brat. Who's going to take care of it? Die along with the kid. Wait a minute. After getting married, my husband forced me to take birth control pills and refused to wear a condom. And yet, he tells me to die with the child and leaves me, a pregnant woman, at a remote parking area. See ya, haha. I don't know what will happen, but well, good luck, haha. A week before my due date, my husband left me at the parking area and went home alone. I want to go home but can't do anything about it. I have no money, and I don't know what to do if I'm left like this. As I was thinking, I heard a man's voice from behind. "Are you okay? Leave your husband to me." The man was someone I knew, but I was so surprised that I couldn't speak. But once I calmed down, I slowly explained the situation, and he understood everything and took me home. The next day, "What? Why are you here?" The next evening, when my husband returned, he was stunned to see me and the man. "Your life is over." I'm a 26-year-old living in Chicago with my husband. We were colleagues at the same company, and we started dating soon because we shared hobbies and personalities. He proposed quickly, and we got married. After getting married, I became a housewife, hoping to support my husband and have happy days, but he started changing immediately after marriage. Now that we're married, I don't need to wear a condom, right? Well, I don't plan on having kids, but it's fine if you take the pill. What? No, that's not the problem. What does he think of women? Whether married or not, it doesn't matter for contraception. If he doesn't want children, we should continue to use condoms. I wanted children and dreamed of having many after marriage, but if he doesn't want them, I can't help it. If one parent doesn't want a child, it's better not to have one. That was my belief. Yet, despite not wanting children, he seemed to prioritize his own desires. Even if I take the pill, I'm not sure if it will suit my body. Why do men always have to be the ones to use condoms? Can't you cooperate a little? Everyone should understand which is more physically taxing, men wearing a condom or women taking pills. I had taken pills during my period before, but they didn't suit me, and it was tough, so I wasn't very keen on this idea from my husband. But since getting married, he had become short-tempered and easily angered over small things, so I couldn't outright deny him. Maybe there's a pill that suits me, and as a housewife supported by him, I thought I should accept it, so I didn't complain much at that time. However, my decision to take the pill led to deep regret. I tried several pills but none suited me, and I only ended up feeling unwell. I'm off tomorrow too, so let's have another fun night today. I don't mind that, but I need to talk about contraception. It seems my body doesn't agree with the pill. So what? So what? What does he mean by that? Does he only care about fulfilling his desires and not about my health? Since we got married, he's become more selfish, and I've had many concerns about contraception. But I never expected such a cold response. As long as he's fine, everything else doesn't matter. I've started to feel disgusted with my husband, who thinks this way, even though it hasn't been a year since we got married, and I'm anxious about whether we can really continue this way. Contraception is not just an issue between my husband and me. What will happen to a child born to a father who doesn't want it? I wished he'd give it some thought. Once a child is born, they become the center of life. It costs money too, and his taking contraception lightly really infuriated me. It's not that easy to get pregnant, so it's fine. So that's it. He's the one who could get me pregnant. That's why he can make such irresponsible statements. Sorry, but if you keep telling me to take the pill, we'll have to stop our nights together. When I said that, my husband was quite surprised and lost for words, but I had to say what needed to be said. Then, for almost a week, my husband didn't speak to me, and I ignored him too. But then something happened that broke this situation. I seemed to be pregnant. For me, who always wanted children, this was truly great news. But at the same time, I was anxious about whether my husband would accept this pregnancy. Many people who don't want children become happy once they actually have one. But I had no idea if that would be true for my husband. What's that? Don't get pregnant on your own. Didn't you take the pill? You must be joking. His reaction was worse than I expected. I did take the pill as he said, but taking it doesn't guarantee 100% contraception. I wasn't totally unprepared for this, but being met with the worst possible reaction really complicated my feelings. But I hadn't given up hope yet. Seeing the face of the actual child might awaken him to his responsibilities as a father. Holding on to that faint hope, I started my pregnancy life. Don't think you can act all spoiled just because you're pregnant. You'll still do your usual chores, and I won't accept any excuses about morning sickness or a big belly to skip housework. He might not have wanted the pregnancy, but still, there was absolutely no supportive behavior from him, and I continued to have a hard time alone. Throughout the pregnancy, I was often scolded and abused by my husband, but I endured and made it to a week before the birth. We're going on an overnight trip for a prayer, so get ready. We'll leave tomorrow. Being only a week away from giving birth, I really wanted to stay at home and rest, but suddenly, as if my husband had developed a sense of fatherhood, we decided to go to a famous church for a birth prayer. I quickly got ready, and we left home in the evening of the next day. The best time for prayers is early in the morning, so we stayed at a nearby accommodation to pray first thing. Before reaching the accommodation, we decided to stop at a service plaza. It was a remote area, so there were hardly any people, but I was tired from sitting in the car seat for so long, so we stopped to have a light meal. However, my husband said he was going to the toilet and didn't return for over 30 minutes. Hello, you're not coming back, are you okay? What, did you just realize it now? Ha ha ha. I left you at the service plaza and I've already driven off. What? I don't have any money, and I can't get back there alone. That's exactly what I intended. Ha ha ha. First of all, I don't want the kid. No one will help you, so just die there with your brat. Ha ha ha. There's no way I, without a license or money, could get back. But while laughing heartily, my husband's voice sounded truly delighted. So that was his intention from the start. He's been resenting and hating me and the child since the pregnancy began, waiting for this moment. As a husband, as a father, and even as a human being, he's done. I was boiling with anger from the bottom of my heart. I'm due to give birth in just a week. Don't joke around, sort out your own life. I have no obligation to help you. Then, he just hung up the phone. I felt like I was about to explode with anger towards my husband, but at the same time, I felt an equal amount of fear. What if I'm left here and nobody helps me? What should I do? Besides, my due date is a week away, but the birth could come sooner. If my water breaks right now. The thought made me so scared that I forgot about my anger towards my husband. And the moment he hung up, my phone's battery died too, leaving me completely helpless. But it's okay. Things will work out somehow. I kept reassuring myself. However, it was already late, and there were no people coming to this remote service plaza, so after about 3 hours, something happened. Oh, what are you doing here in such a place? What, president? It was a pure coincidence, but the president of the company where I used to work, where my husband still works, happened to come to this parking area with his family. I'm saved. I was truly relieved. But I had never expected to meet the president here. Then, I decided to explain to the president everything that had happened without hiding anything. Are you okay? I'm fine. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your help. Good to hear. But why are you here alone? Isn't your delivery due soon? The president knew about my pregnancy, and he must have understood from my belly that the due date was near. Well, the president has 3 children himself, so he must be used to supporting pregnant women. He used to actively participate in company drinking parties, often returning home late at night. I've warned him about it before. This president is known as a good husband and father in the company. So he was suspicious of my husband's post-work activities. Actually, I've been deceived by my husband. This pregnancy is essentially because he refused to use contraception. And yet, he didn't help with the housework during the pregnancy, just complained. It's been really tough. Is that true? Today, he invited me for a prayer before the birth. I thought he had finally changed, but it seems his real intention was to betray me like this. He told me to die along with the brat. Of course, I hadn't met the president since getting married, and the relationship was certainly deeper between him and my husband than with me, a former employee. But my patience had reached its limit. I thought my only ally was my mother, but maybe this president could help me. With that thought, I honestly told him everything my husband had done to me, including this recent incident. I understand. Thanks for telling me everything. I'll do some probing on my end as well. I'll make sure he faces the consequences. It wasn't a major mistake in company operations, and I wasn't sure if my husband would be punished, but I intended to cut ties with my husband eventually, so I decided to leave it to the president for now. Luckily, the president was on his way home from his parents' house and offered to take me home. My phone battery had died, and I had no cash, so I was really saved. I thought as I went home. The next day, around noon, the president visited my home again. As I was explaining to the president in detail what my husband had done to me over the past year, time flew, and it was evening. Hello, why are you back? That's because I picked her up from the service plaza yesterday. Abandoning your wife, who's due to give birth in a week. What were you thinking? Care to explain, President? Well, that's my husband, not expecting his own president to be there, turned pale with surprise. But if he thought he'd get away with just being surprised, he was wrong. He had to take responsibility for what he had done. I've heard about what you've done to some extent, so expect some form of punishment. I can't decide everything, but I think dismissal is appropriate. That's all I can say for now. So, goodbye. After saying that, the president left our house. My husband, still confused about what just happened, eventually realized the situation and turned red with anger at me. You told the president some nonsense, didn't you? Because of you, I might lose my job. Well, isn't that just normal? That's how serious what you've done is. Do you understand that? Indeed, the president took my side, but I never thought it would lead to such severe punishment. I thought at most he would be demoted, but dismissal. That surprised even me. I put on a brave face in front of my husband, but inside, I was just as shocked. You've really done something terrible. How are we going to live now, with a child on the way? You're so irresponsible, too swayed by your emotions. Don't be ridiculous. Who was it that told me and my child to die? It's you who let your emotions drive you to do unforgivable things. I had been patient until now, but this comment was the last straw. Did he really think I would forgive him after continuing to be so selfish? Enough is enough. Besides, it wasn't me who decided on your punishment, but the president himself? He understands because he passionately supports his wife and children, something you're very different from. So yeah, you're nothing like him. All you've been saying is nonsense. That guy always criticizes the drinking parties I attend, a real pain. But this is just an abuse of power. But it's not decided yet that I'm fired, so listen. Go and talk to him right now. It's a problem for you too if I get fired, right? It's beneficial for both of us, isn't it? Even now, he's only thinking about saving himself. Such an absurd man. So, you think I'd want to do that? Don't be ridiculous, okay? This is for you and the child. If I become unemployed, we can't raise the child, can we? I understand your feelings, but be a bit more rational. Those words, I'll throw them right back at him. Why does he think I would act for his sake? Does he still not understand what he has done, even now? His brain must be less than that of a primary schooler. Obviously, I'm going to divorce you, and I will raise the child. Someone like you can't be a proper father, can you? I'll make sure you pay child support and compensation. So, whether you're unemployed or not, it's none of my concern. Maybe you should take out a loan to pay for it. Divorce. Wait a minute. Shouldn't you be happy about this divorce proposal? After all, you told me and your unborn child to die. I'm removing myself from your life, so you should be pleased, right? He seemed to be trying to show his worth to convince me to persuade the president and save him, but the world doesn't work that way. To have lived as long as I have and still lack so much common sense. I feel even the company that employs such a person should fire him immediately for their own future. Wait. Don't say that. Please, think of the child. Divorce isn't the answer. Did you forget what you said? You told me and the child inside me to die, remember? I can't see such a person being a fit father. And it's extremely dangerous. When I clearly expressed this to my husband, he was completely silenced. Soon after, I left the house and ignored all of my husband's contacts. With the president's help, I was able to successfully divorce my husband. Initially, my ex-husband refused to sign the divorce papers, but he had no one on his side, and contacting his parents brought them into the picture. With pressure from everyone, he eventually signed the divorce papers reluctantly and paid me compensation and child support. Thank you so much. Without the president's help, I would still be struggling. And I could give birth safely thanks to the president. Because you stood by my side, I could face the birth with confidence. Well, the child is innocent after all. If it's okay, I have some spare diapers at home. I'll bring them for you to use. Thanks to the president's support throughout, I was able to completely cut ties with my ex-husband and safely give birth to my baby. I've always felt highly respectful towards the president, ever since I was working. After that, I could completely cut ties with my ex-husband. My ex-in-laws even came to my parents' house to apologize on their knees, but I had no intention of blaming them. However, they seemed furious at my ex-husband and had no intention of supporting him, now buried in debt. The reason he's drowning in debt is mainly because of the compensation and child support he owes me. My ex-husband couldn't afford to pay the full amount, so he ended up taking out loans for it all. Well, I don't know how he plans to repay those loans now that he's lost his job, but that's none of my concern. Also, I've disclosed everything about this situation to our mutual acquaintances, so I imagine most of his friends have cut ties with him by now. After all, no one wants to associate with someone who treats their wife and child in such a despicable manner. By the way, I gave birth to a healthy boy soon after that incident, and now I'm happily raising him with the support of my parents at my family home. I don't plan to remarry anytime soon, but raising my child in a single-parent home is far better than having such a scoundrel as a father. I'm determined to give my child a happy life,